Chapter 13:21. Seeing that Chiyu was in a daze and kept talking to himself, the others were shocked, especially when they heard him say that Tang Zheng could control the savage aura. They were scared out of their wits. Before this, the demons had heard Chiyu introduce the uniqueness and horror of the savage aura. They had also heard Chiyu say that the savage aura could not be controlled. Wasn't what was happening now a slap in the face? It was a slap to Chiyu's face. This was also a slap to the faces of all the demons, causing them to lose face. The demons were all interested and had mixed feelings. They really did not know how to face all this. Saint King, however, felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He shouted and said with a trembling voice, "The savage aura is coming out of his palm, which means that the savage aura rushing into my body is also savage aura. This is bad." Although Saint King was a demon, and the ancestors of the demons were immune to the savage aura, it did not mean that the demons would be immune to the savage aura immediately. This was a very long process. If too much of the savage aura entered his body, even if Saint King's cultivation was high, he would not be able to bear the consequences. He hurriedly used his chi to try to dissolve the savage aura, but his chi could not do anything. The savage aura was deeply rooted. What should I do? What should I do? Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he once again struck out with his palm. Saint King's pupils shrank as he stared at the incoming palm. He did not dare to take it head-on, fearing that he would not be able to avoid it in time. His figure flashed, and he dodged to the side. Bang! This palm missed and hit the ground, sending gravel flying. Seeing the panicked Saint King, who only knew how to escape like a stray dog, Tang Zheng laughed mockingly. "Saint King, Chiyu, didn't you say that you wanted to kill me? Now, I'm right in front of you. Come and kill me." Saint King and Chi, you couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Tang Zheng controlled the wild aura, which was equivalent to having a great killing machine. It was obvious that he was a threat to Saint King. Of course they wanted to kill him, but how could they? Ha ha ha. Deafening laughter immediately erupted from the crowd. Everyone looked at the demons in ridicule. "If you won't kill me, then I'll kill you." Tang Zheng did not hold back at all. He waved his hand and attacked Saint King. Saint King did not dare to face him head-on and hurriedly dodged. After forcing Saint King to retreat, Tang Zheng changed the direction of his attack and aimed his spearhead at Chiyu. He quickly rushed toward Chiyu. Cunning! Chiyu and Saint King shouted, but there was nothing they could do. Chiyu was firmly locked on by Tang Zheng's aura and could not escape at all. He could only watch as Tang Zheng attacked. "Stop him!" Saint King saw the situation and did not rush to rescue him. Instead, he hysterically ordered, "Whoosh!" The two demons disregarded their own safety, as if they were not afraid of death, and rushed in front of Chiyu, blocking Tang Zheng. Bang! Two palms were sent forward and hit the two in the chest. Their chests caved in at the same time, and they spat out blood. The wild aura rushed into their bodies like a mad bull, crashing in their 8 extraordinary meridians. In an instant, their eyes were wide open. Their bodies tilted and they fell to the ground dead. The two blocked Tang Zheng's attack and protected Chiyu. However, the price was their own lives. Tang Zheng's pupils trembled. He was annoyed and unwilling. Saint King acted according to the situation and resisted the wild aura in his body with difficulty. He flew to Chiyu's side and helped him up. He could not wait to say, "Ancestor, let's go." Chiyu was unwilling to end things like this, but the reality was so. He had to bow his head. He nodded bitterly. Saint King understood and glared at Tang Zheng. He said, "Retreat." Whoosh! The demons were also unwilling. They were full of anger and helplessness. However, Tang Zheng's wild aura was too threatening. They all ran away. "Don't run. Chase!" Tang Zheng did not give them a chance. He immediately shouted and chased after them. The demons were not weaker than them. Even if they ran away, they did not run for their lives like a sheet of loose sand. Instead, they brought up the rear and sped up to escape. They did not let Tang Zheng and the others beat them up like dogs in the water. The demons had experienced too many retreats in the sky beyond sky. They were orderly and minimized their losses. Tang Zheng and the others chased with all their might, but they only killed a few demons. At the peak of Mount Tai, the hubbub of voices was now silent. Only the sound of the wind could be heard. There were no more bloodlines and blood light in the sky. The sun drilled out of the clouds and shone on the mountain peak. The smell of blood was still very strong. It made people unable to stay here. The ground was almost dyed red with blood. Corpses fell in the pool of blood one after another. No one cared. No one noticed that there was a drop of blood in the pool of blood. It was very unusual. However, it was submerged in the pool of blood. It was like a drop of water mixed in the sea. It was difficult to notice. This drop of blood was different. It contained an aura, a wild aura. This was a drop of blood that fell from the sky. Although the sky-swallowing technique was powerful, it had absorbed almost all the bloodlight and bloodlines. This was the only one that escaped the net. No one noticed at all. Crack! The drop of blood broke. The wild aura immediately spread out and fused with the other blood. However, this wild aura was very weak and difficult to detect. However, as the saying goes, a single spark can start a prairie fire. This wild aura was like a single spark that started a prairie fire. It fused with all the blood on the mountain peak. Moreover, it seeped into the ground and hid this wild aura deeply. Now, even if Tang Zheng and Qiyu came here, it would be difficult for them to discover that the wild aura was hidden in the ground. It could be foreseen that this land that was eroded by the wild aura would undergo earth-shattering changes. By the time others discovered this scene, everything would be too late. What would happen after the land was transformed by the wild aura? The answer was self-evident. A wild aura. This did not mean that using the blood of the witch race to sink into the soil could turn a piece of land into a wild aura. This had to be combined with a corresponding divine ability to achieve this effect. Previously, Qiyu had used this divine ability. However, his ambition was even greater. With the power of the 5 mountains, not only did he turn the peak of Mount Tai into a wild aura, but he also combined the power of the 5 mountains to make a wild aura descend on a large area of Huaxia. This was a very grand plan. As long as it was interrupted, the plan would naturally be ruined. However, the divine ability had already been used, and the blood already possessed this kind of demonic power. Thus, when this fish that had slipped through the net quietly fused into the ground, in time, this piece of land would naturally become a desolate land. However, this needed time to brew, and it would not have an immediate effect. In the sky, the 2 sides were chasing each other. The battle between the 2 sides was still tragic, especially the people who stayed behind to cover the rear. They were almost determined to die. Therefore, although there were only a few people, they still blocked this large army. In fact, Tang Zheng's people had exhausted too much. After experiencing such a life and death battle, they were almost exhausted. It was the final victory that motivated them and allowed them to persevere. Tang Zheng watched the demons escape, but there was nothing he could do. He could only stomp his feet hatefully, waved his hand, and said, "Forget it! Don't chase a cornered enemy." Return to Mount Tai. Under Tang Zheng's order, they all turned around and returned to Mount Tai. After paying a certain price, the demons finally got rid of their pursuers. Immediately, they could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Qiyu's expression was gloomy and uncertain. It was especially frightening. The other demons were as silent as cicadas in winter, not daring to speak. Saint King was still struggling to resist the wild aura. After all, the demons could adapt to the wild aura. Therefore, after putting in a lot of effort, he finally refined the wild aura and was safe and sound. Saint King looked at his battered and exhausted subordinates. He had led them back from the sky beyond heaven. He had wanted to do something big. But the cruelty of reality was beyond his imagination. First, Chiyu appeared and took away his position as the #1 demon. From then on, he could only listen to Chiyu's orders, and not everything was decided by himself. To be a leader who had always been giving orders, this kind of change in role made him very helpless. Later, Chiyu's successive plans did not really succeed. Whether it was going to the Tree of Life to seize the dark stone of heaven and earth, or the operation at Mount Buzhou, these were all ruined by Tang Zheng. Their plans did not succeed, which was very disheartening. There were some dissatisfied voices among the demons. However, Saint King's prestige was still there. Therefore, he forcibly suppressed all of this. Saint King sighed in his heart. It was difficult to hide his disappointed expression, and it was even more difficult to hide the regret in his heart. These people were all people who had followed him for countless years. Now, some were dead and some were injured. It made him sigh endlessly. After a while, he retracted his gaze and gathered his courage to ask, "Ancestor, what should we do next?" Chiyu glared at him fiercely. Seeing the expression between his eyebrows clearly, how could he not understand his thoughts? He said, "Are you feeling sorry for your subordinates who have died?" The sage was silent and didn't speak. So it's true. Are you blaming me for causing their deaths?" Chiyu questioned in a bad mood. "Your subordinate does not dare." Saint King hurriedly bowed. "Since you already think so, what else do you not dare to do?" Chiyu's heart was actually surprised